I used to think the worst thing that could happen was finding your fiancé in bed with another woman. I was wrong. The worst thing is finding him in your office with your own sister, not in a passionate embrace, but hunched over your laptop, methodically stealing your life. That day, I came home an hour early, a bottle of crisp Sauvignon Blanc chilling in my bag, ready to celebrate a future they were already burning to the ground. It was the simple things I cherished most, and they were about to take them all. But the house was not silent. From the top of the stairs, I heard voices, hushed, urgent, coming from my office. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. It was Samuel, yes, but the other voice. It was my sister Lily. My first thought, a fleeting and ugly flicker of suspicion, was of a clandestine romance, an affair. As I crept closer, my socked feet making no sound on the hardwood floor, I almost prayed that was all it was. An affair would have been a simple, clean cut, a wound that, while deep, would eventually scar over. What I found was a cancer. The office door was ajar. I peered through the crack, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. They weren't wrapped in a passionate embrace. They were hunched over my laptop side by side, their heads nearly touching as they stared at the screen. Their posture was one of intense, shared concentration. It was the posture of business partners, of co-conspirators. On the screen, glowing with a malevolent light, was my life's work. My accounting software was open, a column of figures showing the financials of my interior design firm, the one I had bled for, built from nothing. Next to it was a PDF document, the letterhead stark and unfamiliar, Apex Design Group, LLC. And next to that, an email, half composed, addressed to Mr. Harrison, my biggest client, the one whose multi-year retainer was the very bedrock of my financial stability. They were finalizing the transfer of his contract, his money, my future, to their new shell corporation. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. This was not a crime of passion. This was a meticulously planned execution. The cold, methodical nature of it was a physical blow. They were dismantling my life, not with the messy heat of an affair, but with the chilling precision of a surgeon excising a tumor. Only I was the tumor they were cutting away. "Just need to change the routing number," Samuel murmured, his finger hovering over the trackpad. "Did you double-check the address for the new registered agent?" Lily's voice was sharp, focused. The bubbly, slightly helpless tone she usually affected was gone, replaced by a steely competence that was utterly foreign to me. I pushed the door open. The soft creak it made was like a gunshot in the quiet room. 2 heads snapped up. 2 pairs of eyes, one the warm brown of the man I had promised to marry, the other the familiar blue of the sister I had raised as much as our mother had, widened in identical expressions of deer-in-the-headlights shock. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream, thick with the weight of their treachery. In that moment, the 2 pillars of my world crumbled, and I was left standing in the ruins. But how did we get here? How did the 2 people I built my world around become its demolishers? It started, as these things so often do, with a love story. To understand the depth of the wound, you have to see the picture I had so carefully painted before they burned it to the ground. Let's go back. 2 years ago, I met Samuel at a charity gala I had helped design. I was there as a professional, overseeing the final touches, when he approached me. He wasn't my usual type. He was almost too handsome, with a charm that seemed to radiate from him like a physical force. He had a smile that could disarm armies, and a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in a crowded room. He told me he was in finance, something to do with venture capital, but he spoke of my work with a genuine, almost reverent appreciation. He saw the artistry in it, the soul. I was, to put it mildly, smitten. Our courtship was a whirlwind of romantic gestures and deep conversations. He was attentive, supportive, and endlessly fascinated by my ambition. Where other men had been intimidated by my drive, Samuel celebrated it. He was my biggest cheerleader, my most ardent champion. He was, I thought, my perfect match. My relationship with Lily was, I believed, the other great love of my life. 2 years my junior, she was the sun to my moon. Where I was quiet and focused, she was effervescent and scattered. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who had her life meticulously organized. Lily drifted, from job to job, from man to man, always with a dramatic story and a need for a soft place to land. That soft place was always me. I had been her protector, her confidant, her financial safety net since we were teenagers. Our parents, loving but often overwhelmed, had tacitly handed me the role of co-parent, and I had accepted it without question. I loved her with a fierce, unconditional loyalty that was, in retrospect, my greatest weakness. About a year into my relationship with Samuel, Lily's latest romance imploded in spectacular fashion. She had been living with a musician who, she claimed, had cheated on her and kicked her out, leaving her with nothing but a few boxes of clothes and a mountain of debt. She called me, sobbing, from a friend's couch. The solution was obvious, immediate. "Move in with us," I said, without a moment's hesitation. Samuel and I had just moved into a spacious 3-bedroom house, a testament to my firm's growing success. There was more than enough room. Samuel, to his credit, didn't balk. "Of course," he said, wrapping me in a hug. "She's your sister. This is her home, too." And so, our duo became a trio. For a while, it was idyllic. We fell into a comfortable, happy rhythm. I would come home from a long day of client meetings and site visits to find them in the kitchen, laughing as they tried to follow a complex recipe, a bottle of wine open between them. We'd eat together, watch movies, and talk for hours. Samuel and Lily developed a bond that warmed my heart. It was a teasing, sibling-like affection. He would call her kiddo, and she would playfully roll her eyes at his jokes. I felt a profound sense of rightness, of completeness. I had my career, the love of my life, and my beloved sister, all under one roof. I had everything I had ever wanted. I was so busy admiring the beautiful picture we made that I failed to see the rot spreading just beneath the surface. The red flags were there, of course. They always are. But when you are willfully blind, they are nothing more than fluttering bits of cloth in the periphery, easily ignored, easily explained away. The first major shift came about 6 months after Lily moved in. Samuel came to me one evening, a serious expression on his handsome face. He hated his job, he confessed. The finance world was soulless, cutthroat. My world, the world of creativity and transformation, was where he wanted to be. "Let me help you, Zoe," he said, his voice earnest. "Your business is booming. You're turning down work because you can't handle the administrative side on your own. Let me be your partner. I can handle the books, the client communications, the scheduling. You can just focus on the design. Let me do this for you. For us." I saw it as the ultimate act of devotion. He was willing to give up his lucrative career to support my dream. I gave him full access to my business accounts, my client lists, my passwords. I saw it as a merger of our lives, a true partnership. I didn't see it for what it was, the fox asking for the keys to the henhouse. With Samuel managing the back end of the business, Lily, still finding herself and unemployed, began to help him. It started innocently enough. She'd answer the phone if we were both out, or help him organize fabric swatches. Soon, they were spending most of their days together in the home office, while I was out on site. I'd come home, exhausted, and they would give me a rundown of the day's work, a united front of cheerful efficiency. Lily's questions started then too. They were subtle, couched in her usual bubbly curiosity. "Wow, Zoe, that new contract must be worth a fortune. You're doing so well." Or, "Is that a new handbag? You must be rolling in it." At the time, I heard pride in her voice. Now, I recognized the sharp, calculating edge of envy. She would make little digs, always with a laugh, about how easy I had it, how everything I touched seemed to turn to gold. Samuel would just smile, a strange, knowing look in his eyes that I misinterpreted as amusement. Then, small things started to go missing. A $20 bill from my wallet, a $50 from the emergency cash jar in the kitchen. When I mentioned it, confused, they would exchange a look of concern. Samuel would gently suggest I was being forgetful, that I was under so much stress I probably spent it without realizing. Lily would chime in, her brow furrowed with worry. "You have been working so hard, Z. Maybe you just misplaced it." They were a tag team of gaslighting, and I, trusting and exhausted, let them convince me that the problem was in my own head. The sabotage began in earnest about 8 months before the end. It was a slow, creeping poison. The first major incident involved the Harrison Project, a high-profile renovation of a historic downtown apartment. It was a career-making job, and I was pouring my heart and soul into it. Samuel was in charge of all vendor relations, including ordering a set of custom-milled floorboards from a specialized company in Italy. A week before the installation deadline, I called the vendor to confirm the delivery. They had no record of the order. I confronted Samuel, my voice tight with panic. He was a picture of bewildered distress. He swore he had placed the order, even showed me a confirmation email that I now know was a carefully crafted fake. He flew into a performative rage at the Italian company, spending hours on the phone, berating them for their incompetence. Lily was right there, rubbing his back, murmuring soothing words, while shooting me looks of profound sympathy. I had to work around the clock for a week, calling in every favor I had, and ended up paying a fortune to have similar materials rush-shipped from a domestic supplier. We met the deadline, just barely, but my profit margin on the job was wiped out, and my reputation for flawless execution took a significant hit. When I collapsed in a heap of exhaustion and relief, Samuel and Lily were there to praise my resilience, telling me how amazing I was for pulling it off. They made me feel like a hero in a tragedy they had authored. A few months later, I was reviewing my business accounts and noticed a significant dip in my savings. It was a 5-figure discrepancy, a gaping hole where a comfortable cushion should have been. This time, I couldn't dismiss it as forgetfulness. I went to Samuel, the spreadsheet open on my laptop, a cold dread coiling in my gut. He didn't even blink. He launched into a complex, jargon-filled explanation about unexpected tax liabilities, retroactive vendor fees, and quarterly estimated payments I had supposedly forgotten about. He pulled up his own spreadsheets, a dizzying array of numbers and charts that seemed to prove his point. It was a masterful performance of financial obfuscation. "I've been handling it, Zoe," he said, his tone patient, as if explaining something to a child. "I didn't want to worry you. You've been so stressed." Lily, who had been hovering in the doorway, slid in to support him. "He's right, Z. You're not thinking clearly. You're exhausted. We're just trying to take care of you." They made me feel incompetent, hysterical. They were so calm, so logical, so concerned. I backed down, ashamed of my suspicion, and apologized for questioning him. I apologized for not trusting the man who was actively robbing me blind. The final, most insidious piece of their plan came about a month before the end. I came home one evening to find the back door ajar and the living room in mild disarray. A few picture frames were knocked over, and a small, sentimental jewelry box my grandmother had given me was missing. Nothing of real value was gone. I was shaken, unnerved. Samuel and Lily were the perfect portrait of concerned loved ones. They insisted we call the police, who did a cursory check and filed a report. It was Lily who planted the idea. "I just don't feel safe here anymore, Zoe," she said, her voice trembling. "What if they come back?" The next day, Samuel had a quote from a high-tech security company. "Top of the line," he announced. "Multiple cameras, motion sensors, and a cloud-based recording system. We'll be able to see everything right from our phones. No one will ever make us feel unsafe in our own home again." I agreed without a second thought, grateful for his proactive care. I paid for the installation, feeling a sense of security as the technician set up the cameras in the living room, the kitchen, and overlooking the front and back doors. I didn't realize I wasn't installing a system to keep intruders out. I was installing the very system that would eventually give me the evidence to convict the intruders who were already inside. They had staged the break-in, a brilliant, cruel move to test my security and to give them a reason to install the cameras themselves, probably to monitor my movements. They just never imagined I'd be the one reviewing the footage. And so we returned to the office, to the moment the world stopped turning. The blood was roaring in my ears as I stared at their shocked faces, illuminated by the glow of my stolen future on the screen. "What is this?" My voice was a stranger's, a thin, reedy whisper. Samuel slammed the laptop shut, a gesture so futile, so absurd, that a hysterical laugh almost bubbled up my throat. "Zoe, honey, you're home early. Don't honey me, Samuel." The whisper was gone, replaced by a low, dangerous tremor. "Open it! Open the laptop! Now!" Lily started to cry. It was her go-to move, the one that had always worked on me. Her face crumpled, her shoulders shook. "Zoe, it's not what it looks like." "Really, Lily?" I turned my gaze on her, and for the first time I saw her not as my baby sister, but as a stranger, a hostile entity. Because it looks like you and my fiancé are stealing my company. It looks like you're trying to ruin me, so please tell me what it really is. Samuel stood up, trying to regain control, to deploy the charm that had always worked before. Zoe, let's all just calm down. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I finally found my voice, and it came out as a shout. A misunderstanding involving a secret LLC and my biggest client's contract? Were the $50,000 that have vanished from my savings over the last 6 months also a misunderstanding? The color drained from his face. He had underestimated me. He thought his fabricated spreadsheets had been enough. He didn't know I had spent the last 2 weeks quietly, obsessively, cross-referencing every single transaction with my bank statements, a sick feeling growing in my gut. I had wanted to be wrong. I had prayed I was wrong. Their denials crumbled. The shock gave way to a cornered animal defensiveness, and then, horrifically, to a sneering, venomous anger. Fine, Samuel spat, his handsome face twisted into an ugly mask. You want to know? Yes, we're starting our own firm, and yes, we're taking the clients with us. And we're together, Lily added, her voice dripping with a triumphant malice I had never heard before. She stood up and defiantly took Samuel's hand. We've been together for almost a year. The confession of the affair, which would have shattered me an hour ago, was now just another piece of wreckage in the devastation. It was the justification that followed that truly gutted me. You owed us, Zoe, Lily said, her eyes flashing. You have no idea what it's been like, living in your shadow. Perfect Zoe, with her perfect business and her perfect life. You looked down on us, on me. You acted like you were so generous, letting me live here. But you loved it. You loved being the savior, the one who had it all figured out. She's right, Samuel chimed in, his arm protectively around Lily's shoulders. You treated me like an employee, not a partner. I did all the work, managed everything, and for what? To fund your next shopping spree? We deserve a piece of this. We built it as much as you did. Their words were a torrent of poison, a twisted rewriting of our shared history. Every act of love, every gesture of support was reframed as arrogance, as pity, as a debt they were now collecting. They had been living in my house, eating my food, taking my money, all while nurturing a festering resentment that had curdled into this monstrous plan. They didn't just want to leave me, they wanted to destroy me. They wanted to salt the earth so that nothing of mine could ever grow again. I stared at them, at the two people I had loved most in the world, and I felt nothing but a vast, cold emptiness. The grief would come later. The rage was already simmering. But in that moment, all I felt was the chilling clarity of the end. Get out, I said. My voice was quiet again, but this time it was heavy, with the weight of absolute finality. Get your things and get out of my house, now. The hours that followed were a blur of surreal, mechanical motion. I watched from the living room window as they scurried to pack, throwing their belongings into suitcases and boxes. I didn't help. I didn't speak. I just watched, a silent, hollowed-out sentinel in my own violated home. When they were done, they left their keys on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door without a backward glance. I locked it behind them and slid the deadbolt home. The sound echoed in the deafening silence. For the next 2 days, I barely moved from the couch. The silence of the house was a physical presence, pressing in on me. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, was a reminder of the life that had been there just days before. I was drowning in a sea of shock and a grief so profound, it felt like a death. I felt foolish, naive, a walking cliché, the kind, trusting woman who had been played for a fool. The rage came in waves, a white-hot current that made me want to scream and break things. But mostly, I just felt alone, utterly and completely alone. On the third day, something shifted. The fog of shock began to recede, and the cold, hard reality of my situation set in. I was not just heartbroken, I was in serious trouble. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling, and made 3 calls. The first was to a locksmith. The second was to my bank, to freeze my accounts. The third was to a lawyer my father had recommended years ago for my business incorporation. She agreed to see me the next day. Her name was Eleanor, and her calm, no-nonsense voice was the first lifeline I had been thrown. The meeting with Eleanor was brutal. I laid out the story, my voice cracking. She listened patiently, then referred me to a forensic accountant. The accountant's report came back a week later, and it was even worse than I had feared. They had been siphoning money for over a year, a slow, steady bleed that totaled nearly $80,000. They had taken out credit cards in the business's name. They had contacted my top 3 clients, feeding them lies about my instability and offering them a seamless transition to their new firm. The scale of the betrayal was staggering. It was a premeditated, long-term campaign of financial and professional destruction. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the accountant's report, feeling the last vestiges of my strength crumble, when a thought sparked in the darkness. A single, illuminating flash. The security system. My hands shook as I logged into the cloud account on my laptop. I navigated to the saved recordings, my heart pounding. And there it was, hours and hours of footage. I clicked on a random file from 3 weeks prior. The camera in the living room flickered to life. There they were, on my couch, feet up on my coffee table, glasses of my wine in their hands. "Harrison is almost ready to jump," Samuel was saying, a smug grin on his face. "Another week of me telling him you're dropping the ball, and he'll be begging us to take him on." "Did you transfer the last of the funds from the credit card?" Lily asked, scrolling through her phone. "This morning," he confirmed. "Right into the Apex account. She'll never even notice. She's so stressed about the Harrison project she can't see straight. It's almost too easy." Lily laughed, a sound that was nothing like the bright, bubbly laugh I knew. This one was cold and sharp. "Poor, perfect Zoe. She really thinks you installed these cameras for her safety." "Let her," Samuel said, reaching over to kiss her. "It'll make for a great story to tell our friends one day. How we built our empire right under the nose of the woman who thought she was giving us a handout." I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as they mocked me, as they meticulously planned my ruin, as they kissed and laughed in the heart of my home. I felt sick. But beneath the nausea, a new feeling was taking root, a cold, hard resolve. They thought it was too easy. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. I saved the files. I had my proof. I had my weapon. The legal process was a grinding, soul-crushing marathon. There were depositions, injunctions, and endless meetings with Eleanor. The video footage was the bombshell. Their lawyer, a slick man who initially tried to paint it as a simple business dispute, was left speechless. We filed a civil suit for fraud, embezzlement, and theft of intellectual property. We got a restraining order. The battle was on. The hardest part was telling my parents. I called them, my voice flat and emotionless as I laid out the facts. Their reaction was a second, smaller betrayal. There was shock, yes, but it was quickly followed by a desperate, misguided attempt to smooth things over. "But she's your sister, Zoe," my mother said, her voice pleading. "Family is family. Maybe you can all just sit down and talk this through." "Talk it through?" I asked, incredulous. "Mom, she and Samuel stole my life savings and my business. They were planning to leave me with nothing. There is nothing to talk about. Your father and I just think—" "Maybe you're not seeing it clearly," she continued, her voice wavering. "Lily has always been impulsive. She makes mistakes. You can't just cut her out of your life." That was the moment I grew up, the moment I realized that my unconditional love for my family had been a one-way street. They saw Lily as the fragile one who needed protecting, and me as the strong one who could absorb any blow. They wanted me to forgive, to forget, to be the bigger person, because it was easier than confronting the ugly truth about their younger daughter. "No," I said, and my voice was as firm as steel. "You need to listen to me very carefully. You can support me, or you can support her. But you can't do both. If you choose to enable her, if you choose to pretend this didn't happen, then you are choosing to not have a relationship with me. The choice is yours." I hung up the phone, my body trembling with the force of my own conviction. I had drawn a line in the sand, not just with my parents, but for myself. The era of Zoe the savior, Zoe the doormat, was over. The story doesn't end with a dramatic courtroom showdown. It ends, as most things do, with paperwork. Faced with the irrefutable video evidence, Samuel and Lily's case collapsed. They settled. A judgment was entered against them for the full amount they had stolen, plus damages. A permanent injunction prevented them from using my client lists, my designs, or any of my intellectual property. I knew I would likely never see most of the money. They had probably already spent it. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming my name. The months that followed were a slow, arduous process of rebuilding. I had lost my 3 biggest clients and a significant amount of capital. My reputation was bruised, but I still had my talent. I still had my name. I rebranded. I took on smaller projects, ones I was passionate about, pouring all my pain and anger and newfound strength into my work. My new designs were bolder, more honest. My business, though smaller, felt stronger, more authentic. It was mine, in a way it had never been before. It's been a year now. I live alone in the same house, but it feels different. The silence is no longer deafening. It's peaceful. My parents, after a painful period of adjustment, came around. Our relationship is strained, but we are slowly finding a new footing, one based on mutual respect rather than my silent sacrifice. I don't know what happened to Samuel and Lily. I hear whispers now and then. Their business failed. They broke up. I find that I don't care. Their story is no longer intertwined with mine. I haven't started dating. The thought of trusting someone that intimately still feels impossible. But I'm not lonely. I've found a quiet strength in my own solitude, a comfort in my own resilience. The betrayal left a scar that runs deep, a permanent reminder of my own naivete. But it's a scar, not an open wound. It taught me that trust is not a gift to be freely given, but a treasure to be earned. It taught me that I am strong enough to survive the unthinkable, to stand in the rubble of my own life and build it back, board by board, on a foundation of my own making. And that, I've learned, is a love story in itself.